Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to a special edition of Focused on Fins Live. And as always, joined by my co host, Anthony Testino. And tonight, we are going to walk through some mock drafts. So, the idea here is that we're going to do 5 total mock drafts, 2 of them from me, 2 of them from Anthony, getting the opinions of each of us, getting the opinions from you guys. And then our fifth mock draft kind of have a group effort that we'll discuss as we kind of get to that point. Idea here is that we are going to use the Draft Professor website. We are not going to do any trades, and we are going to go through each of these drafts. But Anthony, I know this is something you've wanted to do for a while now, but how you doing tonight?
Good, buddy. Just hanging out. Was watching some March Madness with the wife, and then yeah, once you brought up the possibility of doing mock draft, I got kind of excited because I don't even want to know how many I've completed and done. They're just fun, Again, they mean nothing. I think they're a fun way to learn and gather information without taking them too serious.
Yeah, and I'm going to take the high road here and not ask you how those Tar Heels are doing, but let's
They went bye
let's
bye.
start out right. We're going to do two of us each of us are going to do 2 mock drafts, right? One of us is going to do number 1 and number 3. One of us is going to do number 2 and number 4. We're going to start it out with a live coin flip for who starts it out. Anthony has a coin. He's going to flip it. I'm going to call it. I'm going to go tails because tails never fails. And let's see what we got.
Getting some Friday Night Lights vibes here. I got heads.
Heads. So Anthony
I don't know if I can
is
turn it over and show, but
we're going to have to trust you here. So Anthony is going to have
I'll
draft number 1 and 3. I'm going to have 2 and 4. The idea here is that we are not allowed to draft the same players from one draft to the next. Want 5 completely unique drafts for you to view and see which ones you like as we go through. Make sure to add some comments in there. Let us know what you're thinking of these. So again, we are using the Draft Professor's website. Going to pick the Dolphins, picking at number 11, right? We're going to do 3 rounds for each of these mock drafts, and we're going to go ahead and enter the draft. And again, the idea here is we can go through mock drafts, and different simulators are going to have different top 10s, and you're always going to have, whether it's number 10, number 30, number 43, always a player that you're like, that's not going to be realistic. So the idea here is that you can't draft the same player twice. So we're going to see what we come up with. So here is the first top 10, right? We've got Mendoza, Reese, Maui Noah, Bain, Tate, Freeling, Love, Styles, Downs, and Bailey before Anthony is on the clock at number 11. And do you have an idea where you want to go with this one?
Yeah, I just want to say that's a very realistic top 10 there, by the way.
Agreed.
Yeah, and here, just taking a look at it, I think I would probably go Vega here. And a full disclaimer here with my 2 drafts, I am going to go a little bit more offense heavy in one with the idea of helping Malik, and then the other one I am probably going to go maybe a little bit more defense heavy, giving Halfley some guys, but not completely neglecting helping Willis. So with this one and Vega being the first, we'll make this the offensive draft.
Fair enough. And then going from 11 to 30, right? We get Thieneman, Cooper, Delane, Sadiq, Tyson, Lomu, Woods, Rodriguez, Falk, Lemon, Fano, McNeil, Warren, Boston, Parker, Concepcion, Proctor, Iheanacho, and McCoy all going before the Dolphins get back on the board at 30. And we get this comment from Indade. Not sure if that's showing on the screen, but he says, whichever draft is heavy in the trenches is cheating. Y'all know what I like out here talking dirty.
Hey, listen, one of us is an O-line guy and one of us tends to score touchdowns. I mean, I think I'm playing from behind here, but all right, let's see what we got. I'll tell you what, I mean, no matter what my first, target, I mean, unless somebody crazy drops, which I don't see in this scenario, I'm always looking for Zion Young. I want that edge player at 30, and I think that's just the perfect spot for him if he were to fall and still be there. So I think he's at the bottom. Yep. Yep. So that's not even thinking about it. That's my guy.
Yeah,
He is
love
edge
that
number.
value there for him.
He honestly, like, again, he's pretty much my edge number two. He's got that 4-3, more D end rather than like the stand up 2 point stance kind of linebacker, even though I think he can do a little bit of that too. Yeah, I'm big fan of his. I like him. As long as he's not a knucklehead, I think if Miami were to land him, they'd be very happy.
Yeah, love
All right.
that value there. We're back on the clock at 43. So now we've seen Mesidor, Caden McDonald, Avion Terrell, CJ Allen, Colton Hood, Lee Hunter, Emmanuel Pregnon, Chase Pasantes, Chris Johnson, R. Mason Thomas, Christian Miller, and Keith Abney go off the board before the Dolphins are back on the clock at 43. Anthony, where are you going here?
I'd like to go secondary if possible. Again, I'm trying to keep best player available in mind. But I think that secondary needs help badly. And I think safeties, man, they get a bad rep for being one of those positions that's not a premium position, but again, they're becoming more and more important. I love me some AJ Halsey. Can you go back up to the top? And then actually, can you also include corners though? I do want to see who's in there. Neil, I love Keontae Scott. I wonder if he's a fit just because of his age too. I'll go Halsey. We'll move on. I'm very comfortable with that. The one thing that bothered me, that scared me a little bit, was I wondered if his sideline speed was going to be good enough at the next level. And when he ran the 4.52 at the combine and the rest of his testing numbers, I was pleasantly surprised. And he had even dropped a little bit of weight too, which is what I really wanted to see. So, he kind of checked and answered all questions, checked boxes and answered all questions that I had about him.
It definitely makes sense. So we're not going to read through every pick between there and 75, but you are back on the clock at pick 75 here. On the screen, we have the top options available based on the Draft Professor rankings.
All right. And then, yep. So can you just kind of go down slowly and then, oof, all right, let's see. So there's one, and we are at 75, right? I feel like that's awesome value to get him. I'll go. Oof. It's so tough to commit to somebody, it makes you want to keep looking. But yeah, like I said, we won't take forever. I do typically kind of take a lot longer, but I'd be very happy getting Antonio Williams at 75 there in the third round. I think he's going to be a nice player.
So a player I'm not familiar with in Antonio Williams, is that a bigger receiver? What kind of size does
he's
have?
He's 5'11". So he is again, he's somebody that I do still want to pair with maybe the 6'2", guy. But I don't, again, like I know what we're looking for, what we kind of want, and we want to, what we want to lean into, but it can't be every single pick, because if it was going to be, that, like, then we'd be crossing off and we'd have 60 guys, that we could basically, call draft eligible if, we held, each guy to those standards. Right. So we're still just looking for good football players. And if they happen to be, of the variety of the 6'3" and bigger and physical, great.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's where, the Jalen Waddle trade kind of opens up other options with wide receivers other than those 6'2", 6'3" guys. I think that's, certainly a place that opens up the door for an Antonio Williams for the Dolphins. So now we are back on the clock at 87, going to turn around at 90 and be on the clock again. But what do you want to do at 87 here?
All right, so we got O-line. I feel good about that. We got an edge. I like that. I wouldn't mind adding another one if I could. I would like to do a little more, or get this, the secondary a little more help. But I'm open to offensive line, tight end, receiver, if any of those guys I think are best available. I know a lot of people like Takario Davis, and they see the size, and obviously that jumps out the screen. at people, but I'm not a huge fan. I'm really not. I might be in the minority there, but let's see, and then yeah, can you keep secondary up too? I do want to see kind of what's still available as far as corners and safeties. All right, so Bud Clark there, Oscar Dell, keep it going, please, if you can. Yeah, let's go next. Let's take a look and see what else we got. Zachariah Branch. I'm a big fan, but I know right now he's not particularly a fit. So I'm gonna have to just close my eyes and watch him pass by. Let's go. Yeah, we'll go next. We'll go next page. We'll take a look at one or two more and see what we got.
Yeah, we got Wright, Thompson, World, Prysock, Reed Adams, Rivers, Bond, Moore, Raritan at tight end.
See, saying the problem is, some of these guys I have not watched either. So I mean, there is that involved in this, right? We're still working through that with over 30 days left of the draft. But can you go one more page? And if not, then we'll go back to page one and we'll commit to somebody.
Yeah, so next page gives us Spears Jennings, Bishop Fitzgerald, Kendrick Law, Jack Endries.
I like Kendrick Law. But I wouldn't go. I said I like Kendrick Law, but I wouldn't go there. Sorry, I'm kind of talking through this myself too.
No, you're good. So you got Marlon Klein, Thaddeus Dixon, J.C. Davis, Preston Hodge, Colin Wright, and Malik Muhammad are in there.
Yes, sir.
You got Indeed kind of chiming in there as well, suggesting edge again, maybe linebacker question mark.
Can you go back to page one? So yeah, the thing, like, again, I would love to add another edge, and linebacker is one of those where I've kind of settled on the fact that, like, if I get great value after pick 11, I would probably take it. Maybe if it's Anthony Hill or CJ Allen is there at 30 or whatnot, where I think, maybe some of those are, you could consider great value. If Sonny Styles is there at 11, I would consider that great value. But for the time being, I think, again, despite, how I feel, I could probably live with linebacker one more season and not try to draft, at a spot that we do have two starters technically, right? And Willie Gay being back kind of gives you a solid backup as well. So I would rather spend assets on places that, aren't quite as, the room it doesn't have the veterans and the talent that linebacker does. So you know what? Let's go. Man, it's tough. You know what? I love Bud Clark, man. I'll go Bud Clark, and I'm good with that because you want to give me two good safeties and kind of have them be interchangeable. And Bud Clark has, I think has better man-to-man skills than Halsey, so you're kind of helping him out. I hope not. It better not be, unless they want to give up something hefty. But he better be staying in Miami, man.
Yes, sir. So
okay, you know what? Sorry to jump on you, but I'll go right away. I think I'm leaning Brian Parker. Again, be the smart GM. I will look at everything else, but I think we're going there because I think that's a good opportunity to get an interior. Oh no, we got Vega in this, right? Yeah, sorry.
Vega was your top pick.
Yep. Okay. See, I stopped writing them down. So let's see. LT Overton. Like I told you, LT Overton, man, I think, yeah, maybe a little disappointing for kind of what you would think you'd get out of him if you had high expectations. But I do think he kind of holds up well in the run game. And I think he can be that boring, maybe poor man's Bradley Chubb kind of player where, he's not going to tear out, rip off 10, 12 sacks in a year. But again, just boring and take care of one edge. So that way we can let the hounds out on the other side sort of deal.
So is that where you want to go with 94? LT Overton?
That is I only got one D lineman, right? Yeah, you know what? Let's go that direction. I'm good with that. I also don't want to take forever either on you. I'm dying to see what you do here.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and it's fun taking the time to talk about guys that we don't necessarily, talk about. Like I didn't even think we've mentioned LT Overton on, between all of our shows, so
right.
He gets a little bit of shine in, while doing this.
Absolutely. And then you got pick 94 here. I think this is going to be your last pick
one
in the first iteration, number 90 or 94. Any idea what direction you want to go with this one?
So we got O-line. We got we got Zion on the D line, and we just took Overton right there. And I like the fact that they kind of balance each other. I got two safeties that are interchangeable, given Halfley, all the talent in the world to mold there and do what he wants to do. I do have one receiver, and then can you look at my picks? I didn't. Oh yeah, hold on. There we go.
Yep, we got
Okay, we're good.
Ioana, Young, Halsey, Williams, Clark, and Overton are your picks so far.
Okay, I like that. Let's go. Let's look. Let's look corner, and let's look receiver if possible.
All right, there's your corner and receiver board.
Okay, I know people like Bryce Lance. Skylar Bell intrigues me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. He's 6 foot, so he's still kind of under that threshold of like getting a bigger target. Can you keep going? We'll go another page or two, and if there's nothing there, then we'll go and maybe check out tight end, and we'll pivot to that direction. Maybe
Sure.
his second target we can add will be at tight end rather than receiver. See, Kendrick Law is another guy I really like too. He's also around the 6 foot mark. I'd have a hard time passing on Malik Muhammad. Yeah, I mean, you and I think are both on the same page. We don't miss that name when it's there. I do like him.
That's been sticking out to me for a while.
Yeah, and I knew, like I said, with the rank there, it's I kind of figured he would be here at this spot. It's interesting to me how much how much room there is in between different people's opinions on him. He's got inside outside versatility.
Have different.
Yeah, he's 6 foot, and a guy that's at 6 foot that can go and play inside and in the nickel as well. And he had a good combine. I mean, I don't see it. I like him, man. Yeah, I mean, you know what? We got the safeties. We don't have the corner. I'll go Malik Muhammad because realistically, even if say Juju Brents and is healthy and Jason Marshall ends up, being the guy that I think he can be, and those guys start, Malik Muhammad's got a chance to walk in and be your nickel with the two young guys over the top. So I like the way that secondary would look. That'd be young and fun to watch, kind of develop and go forward.
Yeah, definitely love that value. We will see as we get into my draft that I do not value offensive linemen as high as you do, Anthony, here, which sounds really weird to say out loud. But I really like what you did outside of that in the draft, getting probably one of the top edges in the draft there at the top or at the bottom of round one, bringing in a couple of safeties that have that versatility, bringing in one of my favorite corners of the draft. Don't agree with that D grade that Draft Professors is giving you here. And also bringing in wide receiver and an edge player as well. Comment we have from John Gordon, 11 and 30. We need an offensive weapon in the first round. So that's pick 11 and 30. So, John, if you stick through to our fifth one, we are going to, try to see what we can do to best help Malik Willis if we haven't done it before then. But for now, we are going to start over with draft number 2. This is going to be my draft, my first attempt at a draft, and then we'll circle back to Anthony and then me again. So 4 drafts between the two of us, and then a combined draft at the end. So as we're waiting for this to load, I know you went Ioana with the number 11 pick, Anthony, and we've kind of had this conversation before that for me, I don't see Ioana as a generational guard, and I don't see guard as a position that's really a franchise changing position. So I'm a little more hesitant to go that direction. If that's what's available for the Dolphins, I wouldn't hate the pick, but probably not the direction that I would end up going. So in my mock draft here, top 10 are Mendoza, Reese, Maui Noah, Bain, Tate, Freeling, Love, Styles, Downs, Woods. I think we will get some of these players that we really hope fall to us with some of these other drafts, but for now, we're not getting that. So the top available players, guys that I have first round grades on: Delane, Bailey, uh, Fano is another one that I have a first round grade on. Do not have a first round grade on Falk. McCoy is another one. Sadiq, I do have a first round grade, and that would be an interesting one. And I know the
Very.
Dolphins have talked about building from the inside out. And while I do feel that David Bailey is the best pure pass rusher in this draft, if I was given this top 10 and what was left over, I would have a hard time passing over Mansour Delane, who is my top corner in this draft. I think he is an immediate starter. I think he is the best defensive back. Maybe not best defensive back, right? Because Caleb Downs is certainly in that conversation. But I think we're talking about a number one corner from the time he steps on the field, and that's something the Dolphins roster is lacking right now. So if the top 10 went this way, Mansour Delane is going to be my top pick.
So he was the one that I debated between, those two were the names that stuck out for me. And in your situation, I didn't have David Bailey there, but I would have passed on him as well. I don't particularly love David Bailey. I just have my reasons and feelings there. But real quick, the reason why I went Vega, and I won't spend too much time here, is just, again, like you said, building from the trenches. Let's not make the same mistake. Let's get this O-line thing figured out. I think he helps with that. And I think because we can get a guy like Malik Muhammad all the way down at 94, and that is the difference between, the difference there between, okay, maybe a Jalen Farmer or something else in the third round. I think maybe the difference between Vega and Farmer, versus Mansour and Malik, that kind, you know what I'm saying? And just more options at CB. It made me it pressured me a little bit into saying, you know what, I like I like how many opportunities I'll have later at CB. That's all,
Yeah, I hear you.
and that's what it is. It's tough.
Yeah, and we're getting this comment from Indate as well. Guard in a franchise changing position until a guard whiffs on a block and your QB forgets how to count to 4 on one hand. I
Very
completely
true.
get that. But at the same time, where this franchise is today, again, this is my opinion specifically, where the franchise is in today, I am not catering to one specific player. I am not going to pass up a player that I feel is better than Iowane to bolster the offensive line. In my opinion, if Malik Willis is a franchise quarterback, he's going to prove it regardless of what he has out there. Maybe not from a wins and losses perspective, but you're going to see those flashes in what he does. I don't feel the need to make concessions in this first year of the rebuild in trying to build an offensive line to fit him when there are better players available. So as we move on to number 30 here, Pregnon is a good guard. He's not going to be the top player on my board at 30. CJ Allen, I do have a low first round grade on him, so he's going to be in consideration here. Zion Young, I have a high second round grade. Not going to get him because you drafted him, Anthony, but this is a player that I definitely like in this number 30 position. Have McNeil Warren, also another safety that's pretty high on my board. Blake Miller makes a lot of sense. And I think this might be, and I'm going to check page 2 and page 3. Oh, man, Anthony Hill. So Anthony Hill is my number 2 ranked linebacker on my board here. So definitely going to get consideration there. Ty Simpson is an interesting one. I like Ty Simpson, not a love type player, but at the same time, if you're trying to get that 5th round option, I could definitely see the appeal of going with a Ty Simpson to compete with a Malik Willis. And again, right, lock the door, let them fight it out, see who comes out on top. Caleb Tiernan, Malachi Lawrence, players I like as well. So for me, basically, this comes down to Anthony Hill and Blake Miller. Blake Miller, I feel, could be a player that could, probably moonlight as a right guard in 2025 or 2026. before replacing Austin Jackson in 2027. I think that he is an ideal candidate to be your right tackle. But at the same time, I have a second round grade or a 1 to 2 grade on Blake Miller. I have a clear round 1 grade on Anthony Hill. So I am going to go best player available for me on this board. Go Anthony Hill and, hope that I can still fill out the offensive line as we move forward here.
Interesting. I know you
Got
like him a lot, and I do as well.
Comment here from Indade. I have a different philosophical approach to what the positions are asked to do on a down by down basis and the depth at the position in the draft. No way of knowing who'd be right. And that's what makes this a lot of fun. Also says that he wouldn't be mad at Delane either. So as we get into pick 43, so it seems like my kind of risk there paid off because we do still have Blake Miller on the board here for me. And as I look through some of these other names, right, I do have a second round on Jacoby Lane. He's a little bit further down.
Really?
Looking at
Second? Huh?
I
Sorry.
do. I like what
know
he
you like
brings
him.
that
Okay.
big receiver, the 50-50 ball stuff.
Okay.
I have Cassius Howell with a second round grade as well. And then already drafted a linebacker, already drafted a corner. The only safety that I have in that second round is Dylan Thieneman, who is already off the board. So this to me is a very clear pick. Like the risk that I took there with Anthony Hill, able to circle back, get Blake Miller, whether he can play guard or not in 2026. I think he's a great candidate to replace Austin Jackson as that right tackle in 2027. So we circle back here to pick number 75. And again, just kind of looking through, right? We already picked a cornerback, already picked an offensive tackle, already picked a linebacker. Tight ends are not going to really be in the conversation there, right? Is there an edge that I would like that high? We just talked about off air, denied Dennis Sutton. I'm not sure that I am that high on him. And I'm not sure that any of these guys that are on the board really have the ranking that I would like there. I think kind of a surprise one for me here, right? And I know that the ranking is very low on Jack Endries when we talk about Draft Professor, but I don't take Draft Professor as a single source of truth thing here. But Jack Endries is a player that I actually have a round 2 grade on. I like him a lot. I like his ability
Interesting.
as an inline wide tight end. And I think the only other player that really comes into factor for me is when we look at cornerback, and Keontae Scott is another player that I have a round 2 grade on. And I have right now on my board, I have more corners that I like as we move further into day 2 and day 3 that I like than I do tight ends. And part of that has to do with just how much scouting I've done for the tight ends. But Keontae Scott, I feel, is a very versatile player. We get Indade asking in here, right? Do you see Keontae more as a nickel safety or a straight cornerback? I see him more as that nickel safety. I think he can moonlight on the outside a little bit, but if we're talking about what he can do outside of the nickel, I would prefer to see him more at the safety. And I think that he is the right type of player, right? If I'm taking Delane, Hill, and Blake Miller first, I think that Keontae fills the ideal spot for that nickel type player.
Absolute dog, by the way. He made Daniel Jeremiah's top 10 dogs list, for this draft class.
Absolutely. So now we get down to pick 87. And of course, now we're getting a little thinner. We're getting into round 3. If he is still on the board, again, like I don't necessarily want to take draft professors. We can see the rankings here. We can't see the rankings on a live draft, is where everybody else has them drafted. At this point, I feel like we need to get Malik Willis some help, right? We've gotten him a little bit of help in Blake Miller. Everything else has been defensive. Jacoby Lane is a player, again, that I like his size. I like his ability on 50-50 balls. I get the concerns with his ability to get off the line. But at this point in the draft, this is a player that I'm going to go ahead and pick for the Dolphins because I do have, a round 2 grade on him. And I think that he provides that ability to win contested catches, gives you a weapon offensively. Getting down to pick number 90 now. And, now we're getting late into round 3. Now we have a little bit more flexibility in terms of what we want to do. We have added secondary help. We have essentially replaced linebacker Tyrell Dodson, right? We have added insurance to Austin Jackson. I feel like we have really added a little bit of flexibility in terms of what we can do here, right? So now I am going to circle back, and again, like, don't want to sound like a broken record. I'm going to try not to say this after this first time that I do the draft. I am not using draft professors as a single source of truth. I really like Jack Endries. I'm not going to play the game of hoping that he falls to us in day 3. I think he is a ideal Y-type tight end, the type of player that is missing on the roster. So I'm going to go ahead and grab him at number 90 here, despite the 128 overall rank. And then we circle back to what I believe is going to be the last pick for us in this 3-round mock, number 94. And again, like, we are stacking up round 3 picks. As I look at quarterbacks, right, maybe this is an opportunity where a Taylor Green, Jalen Daniels, right, you have all of these 3rd-round picks. I could see the appeal of going in that direction, right? Wide receiver, just kind of added a big 50-50 ball guy in Jacoby Lane, already added a tight end. Running backs, I'm a big fan of Nick Singleton. Need to really dive into his tape more. Not sure the Dolphins are going to look there. Got the offensive line stuff, some good candidates there. I like Davison Igbinosun. And I think I kind of like that. So I'm going to keep that on the board. Safety.
I think that'd be a good spot
I'm
for
a
him.
big fan of Michael Taft. So, Malik Muhammad is still on the board there, but you drafted him, Anthony. So I'm going to stay away from it in this draft. Let's see. So nothing really in the D-line room. Edge room really doesn't have anything too entertaining there. So as we kind of focus in, right? I'm going to focus in on the cornerbacks here. I do like Davidson Igbinosun. I like the size that he presents on the outside. I know that you went with a safety in there. I think Keontae Scott kind of plays a hybrid there. But I think if you get Mansour Delane on one side, that is your sub 6-foot corner on one side, you put Davison Igbinosun on the other. I
So
think
you
you
don't
would
want
have some good potential there to possibly come out with a really good secondary coming out of this draft. I know I went really defensive heavy. So here is my first iteration of my mock draft. Delane, Hill, Miller, Scott, Lane, Endries, who got a D from Draft Professor, and finished it up with Igbinosun. Any thoughts you have on this one, Anthony, or you want to get rocking
yeah,
and
no,
rolling with draft
I
number 3?
definitely wanted to ask you, I love the Mansour pick, right? I would have zero issue with, walking out of 11 with him. And I do think that, regardless of how I feel about the guys that are in the cornerback room currently, I do think, I'm a big advocate for kind of slotting guys on the totem pole where they belong, right? I don't think you look at Brent and say, or Marshall and say either one of those guys is a 1. but could they really take a step this year and be a 2? I think that is possible. Where, like you said, when you take Mansour, that's instantly, I think, your plug and play 1 right there. That means now everybody kind of falls and slots into where they belong, right? But my thing is that and I like Davison actually, especially considering I didn't at first. When you go Delane, Scott, who is definitely more nickel, and I like that, but then Igbinosun too. Is that any kind of indication on how you feel about Marshall and Brent's there? I know Brent's is, we got to see if he's even healthy this year. And let's say he's not, right? I mean, then at that point you have 3 guys that can play outside, and that's okay. I've also been one of the only ones that's really mentioned pre-draft process with Brent's and the fact that, some saw him as a safety and being versatile in that, that aspect. I think that the way Sully has mentioned him seems like maybe he sees him as a corner, but until they get out in the field and we see where they go, we won't know that for sure. So, just some background on kind of how I see it now and why, it makes me curious.
Yeah, and that's a fair question. I do like Brent's, right? There is the injury concerns that he never seems to be able to stay on the field. I do like Marshall, but I'm not willing to kind of hand Marshall that number 2 cornerback position. And I do admit that when I got to pick number 94, I didn't know what direction I really wanted to go there. So it kind of came down to more so best player available in a position that didn't feel like we had guys locked down. So yeah, Igbinosun was kind of best player available, but if the Dolphins were to decide to go another player because they were, more ready to let Brent's, Marshall, Baker, let them battle it out as that number 2 perimeter corner outside of Mansour Delane, then I would have, no issues at all with that approach either.
Cool. Yeah, great draft, man. Again, I would be thrilled with that as well. Again, the only one is that, for me, I'm not a huge Jacoby Lane guy. But hey, I mean, listen, when we're picking guys, this is a coin flip, man. We can do our best to watch the film and get an idea, but we don't know what's going inside these guys' heads either. We don't know how hard, of a worker they are. Quite, at least most of them we don't know. Anybody can turn into anything, right? I mean, they can be a top 10 receiver. He could be in, out of the league in 3 years. So I could very easily just as well be wrong. So I do like what you did there.
Absolutely. So we are starting the 3rd mock draft here. This is going to be back to Anthony. So
all right, baby, let's get it. So no Vega, no Mansour.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Mendoza, Reese, Maui Noah, Bain, Tate, Freeling, Love, Styles, Downs, Bailey are your top 10.
Let me
You
roll
are
up the
not
sleeves
allowed
here
to
a little
take
bit.
Delane or Iowana.
All
Where
right.
do you want to go with number 11?
Okay, so I'm not a Makai Lemon guy, especially not at 11. That is not for me. I think I have my reasons. Again, I think he's a little bit small. I think he's a dog. I think he's a good player. I just don't think he's just not a fit for. He's not a fit for me. I don't think he's necessarily a fit for Miami right now. Fano is I like, but again, I think he's one where this is kind of a picture perfect scenario for him too, right? Where he would probably walk in and be your right guard with Austin Jackson continuing to play at least one more season at right tackle. With the arm length, he might be better suited at guard, or even, he took center snaps at the combine. I like Keldrick Falk a little better than most. I still think 11 is a little bit high for him. Jordan Tyson, very explosive, but I'm not willing to risk, the 11th pick on a guy that really, cannot stay healthy and always seems like he's dealing with something. We've had enough of that in Miami. Now, listen, if he's there at 30 for whatever reason, because the rest of the league feels the same way and he's a little bit risky, which again is not going to happen. But if in that world, I think 30 is a place where I would be fine doing it, or if Miami traded back, I'd be fine doing it as well. But 11, a little scary for me. Let's see. Jermod McCoy, man. supposed, really good, but we haven't seen him do anything, right? So, I mean, that's, you want to talk about risk, that's about as risky as it gets. Omar Cooper Jr., I really, really like. I think, again, he's probably, a little bit better of a fit later on. Sadiq, I have my own kind of reasons, I think, as to why I'm, not necessarily a fan, but again, I know that the talent level is elite. Concepcion, a little early for him. Can you move on? Actually, let's take a look. I don't think I even looked at the second page last time. Peter Woods, but I still have faith in, like, our D line a little bit better than most. And yeah, my boy's sitting right there. I don't think we're going to spend too much time waiting around. Listen, I know it's early for a safety. I like Thieneman a lot. I think, when you watch his tape, I think when you look at what he did at Oregon, the dude was basically playing middle linebacker and in the box the entire time and was excelling. And then you go back to his Purdue tape, and he was all over the field, covering people from the slot, running sideline to sideline, deep balls. I mean, it was awesome to see. And he has the ball skills. He's got a hell of a lot more production. I don't think maybe he's quite the player maybe that Caleb Downs is. And, maybe he's not as safe, but he's still pretty damn safe. And I, again, can really appreciate, when guys find a way to get the football. So I know it's high, but I don't care. I think safety is becoming more important than people realize. And I'll go Dylan Thieneman.
Very good. I like that pick. It does feel a little high for me, but I think that, when you think about what Coach Hafley wants to do with his defense, the way that he wants to be multiple, I think that Thieneman brings a lot of different things that he can do and provides that versatility that can kind of open up doors in that defense. So that's your pick at number 11. And now
Yep.
we are moving on to number 30.
All right. So the last one was defense heavy. And despite going round one and going defense, I am going to try to go a little more in the offensive direction and just make sure that I give Malik some help. But it is really difficult for me to pass on Zion Young. I know I did that before. I would probably do that again if I could. Let's see. I also really like Chris Johnson, man. Chris Johnson's good football player. That would be another guy to slot in there and just put in the cornerback room. And then after that, I honestly could be done with it.
Would you be, let me ask you this, would you be opposed to going two defensive backs as the top of this draft, right? Thieneman, Johnson, is that something
No.
that you would be opposed to doing?
No, because I think when you look at the roster, right, and I won't spend too much time on it, but we can just rip through this real quick. Quarterback, we know, right? Running back, probably our deepest position on the team. Offensive line, we know that we're missing one, and there's some a question mark at another one. And we know Austin Jackson maybe is not the future, but okay, that's like you can pen him in at right tackle, I think, right? Tight end, probably a fairly, with Dulcich. I really like Jalen Conyers, but at the same time, we don't know what's there. Still kind of missing that inline guy, right? Receiver, that is a very bare position. That is one of them, right? But I mean, and with offensive line, yes, it needs to be improved. But if we had to play a game tomorrow, we could put out, 5 and play a game tomorrow. I think when you get to the D line, there's, we need edge guys, right? But I'm okay with seeing another year what the defensive tackles do and how they fit into this thing. I don't think that's a need. I don't really want to go that direction. Tight end or linebackers, again, we're okay. I think we can live with what we got there. Corner and safety, there is just not a whole lot there aside from, again, and I'm even on the more optimistic side when it comes to Marshall and Juju Brents. Dante Trader, is a limited player in my opinion. What else is there? I really think we need to add at least 3 guys. And this is, a head coach that plays and designs the defense through the secondary, through the secondary's eyes first, because that's what he is a DB guy. So he wants talent there. There's no doubt about that. So I would have no issue with going safety, corner. I mean, shit. You could even make the case for corner and even another corner, as long as one of them really had some inside, and maybe some safety versatility like a Keontae Scott, right? I even actually, Bucky Brooks actually even just called Bud Clark a nickel. He didn't even call him a safety. He sees him as a nickel, which I found super interesting.
Gotcha.
All right, so sorry about that little rant,
You're
but
good.
again, that's the state of the
No, I
Dolphins,
love it.
man.
I love that explanation.
Let's so for the sake of time, since I took some time there, I like Blake Miller there. Let's go one page, and if there's nothing screaming my name, then you know what, we'll go Chris Johnson.
All right, so here's page 2. You got Chase Basantis, Keontae Scott, Halsey, Simpson, Dunker, Bernard, Trotter, Tiernan, Lawrence, Howell.
Yeah, you know what? You can keep that mouse right there, buddy. I'll pull the trigger on Mekhi Lawrence and take a swing there. I think he's going to be a damn good football player. And Miami right now doesn't really have a guy that can get after the passer that is locked up for any more than 1 year. This is a big year 3 for Chop. They got to get somebody else in there before that whole room empties out and we have nobody. And like you said, we get lucky here. So you know what? We won't even waste time just because I know I took some time and we're only having fun here and nobody take it too serious. I'll go Chris Johnson. I like that.
All right, so that gets us to
right now
3, pick number 75.
We've upgraded our secondary with a safety that can play up top, cover 2, can come down into the box and help. When we want to stack the box, he can cover in the nickel, which kind of takes away the need for a nickel or a dire need for a nickel. In that case, we would need 2 more safeties, so it's nice because he provides some versatility there. If you really wanted to add to the safety room or the corner room, and basically whichever way you go, you just take that off of Thieneman's plate. That would be a fun secondary with adding one of those guys. We've already taken Keontae Scott, right? Who was at the top?
Top was Julian
Neal. I like Julian Neal too, man. I don't think enough people talk about him. But you know what? Let's keep going down. We've taken him. Let's look in the receiver territory. I know we've been kind of putting that off a little bit.
And so wide receivers, Antonio Williams, Jacoby Lane, Malachi Fields, Bryce Lance, Zachariah Branch, Dezon Stribling, Skylar Bell, Brendan Thompson, Eric Rivers, Lewis Bond are your top options.
There is some speed there. I like Malachi Fields, but I find myself juggling what I think he is. He's a guy that wanted to take the top off. We saw it at the Senior Bowl. I look at him and his kind of numbers, and the numbers aren't the whole thing, but they are they're making me question what I really believe he can be. Is he a good enough possession guy to catch 85 balls if he hits his ceiling, 90 balls, or is he just I'm a big guy, I'm going to catch 45 and that's going to be that for 700 yards. Let's go back to all players and then let's just go to the second page. Let's take a peek and see what we got there.
So second page, all players: Dalen Everett, Jacoby Lane, LT Overton, Keelan Rutledge, Malachi Fields, Oscar Delp, Romello Height, Bryce Lance, Austin Barber, Bo Stevens.
I like Keelan Rutledge a lot. I don't think he was even there the first time we went through this. I would love to add some nastiness, and I think going back to the the Vega thing a little bit too. I fully agree. Listen, no guard, no matter how good, has ever been like the key piece, right, to somebody winning more games or changing the face of the franchise or anything like that. But I think offensive line has to be looked at a little bit differently, and I think that's why I'm a little bit more okay going that direction. Is offensive line is like the one place that I don't really see too many. It shouldn't be as individualized, in my opinion, where I look at what does he do for the group and what does the group now look like when you add this player. And when you add Vega, I think that offensive line ends up looking pretty damn good when you are optimistic about it, at least. Patrick Paul with a question mark at left guard, Brewer, Vega, and Austin Jackson. I mean, I think that that's, pretty solid. And I think that I would be comfortable with the expectation that that's good enough for Malik to work with, right? Again, we want to give this guy a chance. So that's all. I just want to throw that in there. And I think that's kind of the reason why I would look at Rutledge here and probably skip, the receiver maybe, and go with Rutledge. Again, listen, you can have all the receivers and talent in the world, but if the quarterback doesn't have time to set his feet and go through his progressions and do all that stuff, it don't matter who you got running routes and trying to get open.
Yeah, and I like Rutledge there more than I like Ioana at number 11. Rutledge for me is my number 2 guard on my board if you take out, possible tackle convert. So a player that I'm really high on, and I like the value there better than I would like the number 11 overall going to a guard. Just my opinion, right?
Absolutely. I can absolutely understand that. And to be honest with you, I do too. I would much rather lean, and get somebody. It's just, I think it's risky to really hope that he's there. And that's why, you know what I mean? I ended up doing it. But
yeah, and that's fair because the guards are kind of thin for me this year, right?
Yes.
Like I like the idea of Fano at guard. I like the idea of Maui Noah at guard. Obviously, like Ioana at guard. And Rutledge and Pregnon are kind of the next tier of that, and then it kind of drops off after that. So I understand the concern of, if that's a primary goal for you in the draft, I understand the risk that you feel by not addressing that at number 11. But you are here at number 87 now. Let me know what you're thinking here.
Can you scroll up real quick? I actually just want to see and be reminded of what I got. All right, so I got secondary. I got
Lawrence,
an edge.
Johnson, Rutledge.
Okay, so I'd like to maybe look at. Let's see what we have at receiver. Let's see what we have at edge. Let's see what we have at secondary linebacker, and we'll kind of skim through those 5 positions.
All right, and that's what we have.
Yes, I'm good with that.
So you got Scott, Davis, Taff, Clark, Williams, Lee the third, Everett, Lane, Overton, Lance are your first screen.
Okay, let's go to the next page.
Next page, you got Husky, Branch, Barham, Stribling, Genesis Smith, Kendall Daniels, Malik Muhammad again, Skylar Bell, Max Llewellyn, Caleb Elarms Orr.
Can you take a look and see if Elijah Surratt or Ted Hurst are there?
Oh, let's go back to all and then tight ends. I do not
receivers. Ted Hurst and Surratt receivers. Let's see. All right, so Rivers, Lewis Bond, Kendrick. I'd be very surprised if they were that low.
Yeah, I don't look like they're gone. Either of them on there.
I love Surratt, or Hurst in the third, but they might have to go at that 75 spot rather than wait until 90, 94. Let's see. Okay, sorry, but can you now go back to the original? Let's go receiver, corner, safety, edge, and linebacker, and just get a quick look at what's there. And then we know we got a couple of guys that we already took. We'll go second page on this one, and then I'll try to make a decision fairly quickly. You know what? Again, since we're just having fun, we're not taking this too serious. I'm not sure I really like the player. I'm just not sure I would do it for Miami, but I'll go Zachariah Branch and get some, we'll get some juice, in this receiver room. This is a kid you can do a lot with. And, if you just watch his tape from last year and how Georgia used him, you're not going to be super thrilled because his, average depth of target was might as well have been 0. But if you go back and watch his USC tape, he's a lot of fun. This is a kid I've actually had my eye on for a few years. He was the next guy after I was in love with Zay Flowers. So I really like this kid. Just small. Okay. Go ahead, bud. If you want to rip off some names, go ahead.
Yeah, you got 90 and 94, right? So a lot of the same names. as we had there at 87. The only other names to come off the board were offensive tackle Keegan Trost out of Missouri and offensive tackle Jude Bowery out of Boston College were the only other two names.
All right, you know what? So let's keep that same search, and we'll just move along to maybe second page, and then we'll move quickly to third page if nothing sticks out, right? So we'll go back to receiver, receiver, safety, corner, edge, and linebacker, and then we'll go to second page, and then like I said, I'm not sure I'm going to see anything there, so I'm kind of leaning third page already. Yeah, let's go third page. I like Kyle Lewis, man. He's interesting. I don't know how. I'm not sure that I've even figured out how I would deploy him or see him. Really tricky, but fun. I like Hendrick Law. I think it's a little early for that. All right, let's go back to all, and I'll make a quick decision. Scroll for me, bud. We've already used Keontae. I won't take Taco. Crown over Dalen Everett. Keep going. Jacoby Lane, we already used those. Go one more page, and I'm going to snag somebody from here just for time's sake. And I want to give you some time, obviously, to do your thing. You know what? Let's go. Let's go Oscar Delp. Let's go a little outside the box. Okay, we got one receiver, and then you know what? If we have to get another, maybe tight end is where the second pass catcher, provides some help. It doesn't have to be a receiver. We're not trying to win next year. We do have 2027 and an entire offseason with 120 million in cap. Not everything is going to be perfect and filled the way we want it to this year. And then here, scroll down for me. I know it's kind of the same names, but
yeah. So you had Alarms or Genesis Smith, Malik Muhammad are the three names that came off the board since your last pick.
Let's go to page 4. Let's see if somebody's, like you said, a little bit lower than they maybe I'm anticipating names wise. And then keep going. Let's go one more. See if we got anybody hiding that I really like. Keep going. And then let's, you know what? Let's take a swing here. I actually like Deontay Lawson a little bit. So let's go linebacker. Let's throw one in there.
Deontay Lawson out of Alabama?
Yeah, let's take a swing there. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time here.
No, you're good. So that finishes up your draft, right? Thieneman, Lawrence, Johnson, Rutledge, Branch, Delp, Lawson. So Lawson is a player that I'm not familiar with. So tell me about him a little bit.
So I only watched him a little bit, but it's somebody that I should probably spend a little more time on. Like I'm with you. I like Anthony Hill. CJ Allen I like too, but again, I don't really think that linebacker screaming to me unless it's Sonny Styles. So I've kind of, I want to say put linebacker on the back burner a little bit. But Lawson's a dude that can move, and I've seen him, with some real juice. He's athletic. I think he's like, from memory, he's a little bit longer too. So he's got that 6'2", like 235 kind of build, where, I think, like I'm okay with that. It's not too light, I would maybe prefer somebody that's like 240, 245, that can really move, but those guys are kind of rare. So maybe he's a little bit lighter than I'd want. But again, like I was really looking for somebody with the length, thinking about Quay Walker and what Green Bay kind of had in the middle of their defense with him and Edgerrin Cooper, where okay, he's kind of got this similar athletic ability and similar size. So yeah, if you haven't taken a look, take a peek. Let me know what you think. That'll be another guy we'll be texting on the side about.
Yeah, definitely one I'll have to take a look at. The way that you're describing him there makes a lot of sense in terms of what the Dolphins are likely looking for. Shout out to Joe Holt 816, longtime watcher of the channel, throwing in $20 there. Definitely appreciate that, Anthony. I enjoy doing this. That's why we're popping in here on a Saturday night, checking this out. So I'm going to move on to my second mock draft. Again, 3 rounds, and we're going to try to stay away from the players that Anthony and I have selected through our first 3 drafts of 3 rounds.
Good
We
luck. That
selected
gets tough, brother.
what's
It got.
that?
I said good luck.
Oh,
It got tough, man.
oh, I know, and you know, I think that the top pick is probably going to be one of the toughest ones here.
Hey, maybe we get lucky. Maybe somebody slides. Give
Sonny
us a Caleb
Styles, maybe.
Downs.
Like,
Give
let's
me that.
make it easy on me.
Speak it
Like,
into
give me a Sonny
existence,
Styles,
baby.
a Caleb Downs. Like, I know I'm not getting that.
Come on.
That's a pipe dream, right? Mendoza, Reese, Maui Noah, Bain, Tate, Freeling, Love,
Ah,
Styles, Downs, and Bailey. So that puts me in a tough position.
yes, it
Um,
does.
it, phew. And I think if it comes to this,
Tough, man. That is tough.
man, that's tough. I like Jermon McCoy a lot, like, but I still feel like we need to see him run before we can say that he is the number 11 overall pick. Um, I do have a first round grade on him right now, but that has an asterisk dependent on his ability to perform. For me, when I look at this board, right, already did the lane once, not going to do that again. And when I look at Iowana versus Fano, I've already tried to elaborate why I don't feel that a guard makes sense at number 11. But Fano is a player that I would consider 11. And the reason for that being is that I see Fano as a tackle, right? I think that, when Austin Jackson moves on, that Fano is a player that either he is going to be able to move out and be your starting right tackle, or he's going to be a Pro Bowl, all pro player type guard. So if I'm comparing those two players side by side, then Fano is going to be my pick at number 11.
I like that.
And couple of comments we have here. So we got Dundee Dolphin, always a big
Dundee.
fan of his, right? Interesting. You have Rutledge ahead of Pregnon. So those two are kind of in the same tier for me. I like both of them. I really like what Pregnon does in the run game. I think that Rutledge is a better all around player. I think that Rutledge is better as a pass blocker than what Pregnon is. I feel like Pregnon feet go a little bit dead there when he has to move horizontally. So for that reason, and a lot of my grading has more to do with how I feel a player fits in the Dolphins system. So if we're talking about a gap or man scheme, then Pregnon may get the nod because he is an absolute monster in the run game. But in terms of a scheme that asks those linemen to have that lateral quickness, I would have Rutledge ahead of him. And then indeed, parameters make you realize how thin the draft can be for you guys. And that is 100% move. And then indeed coming in also, Fano is an effortless mover. I worry about the anchor. I don't have that same concern, but that's certainly something to look into a little bit more. As we get into pick 30, we have Emmanuel Pregnon per draft professors being that top option. I did already go with a guard tackle combo in that sense, so I'm not going to circle back and go back to that. CJ Allen might be the pick here. It was Anthony Hill in my last one. I do have a first round grade on CJ Allen. I think that Anthony Hill is a little better in the pass game than what CJ Allen is. I think that if I'm looking at the role for CJ Allen, it would be more of an early down player, at least early in his career. And I think you could find ways to kind of complement him as a rookie until he develops. But it's definitely a player that I like a lot. Um, was so Chris Johnson was selected by you with number 43, so I'll stay away from that. Zion Young was selected at number 30. That would probably be my top pick, Zion Young, just from a physical traits perspective. Blake Miller, a player that I selected before. So I guess looking here, I'm
Why
going to
don't you
go corner.
take a look and see what's at second page there? Maybe somebody's hiding. You ain't getting sleepy yet.
It's only quarter after 11. Ian Nachor, not quite that high. Basantis is a little bit lower. Malachi Lawrence, I don't have quite as high. I like the flashes. The consistency just isn't there for me.
I
Halsey
get that.
Scott.
Yep.
You know what? I'm going to go. So we haven't drafted a quarterback yet in
Think
any
about it.
of our drafts, right? So, and I do think that the number 30 pick provides a lot of flexibility there in the sense of drafting a quarterback. And like I said with my first draft, I do like Ty Simpson. I don't know that I necessarily have a first round grade on Ty Simpson, but I can see the appeal of it, right? If you're drafting a quarterback in the first or second round, that's somebody that you're hoping develops in that fifth round option becomes that much more valuable. So with that in mind, I am going to pull the trigger on Ty Simpson at quarterback
Wow.
here at
Wow.
number
So
30.
with that though, now you kind of are removing yourself from taking one next year early, no? Because I mean, when you take him in the first round like that, that's not somebody that you look at for a year and say, no, I don't really like it. We got to move on. Talking about a first, you know what I mean? Like, and you have Malik. So that's a commitment, I think, where next year, if you get the high pick, like you're in the Leonard Moore and Jeremiah Smith market now. You're no longer looking for Arch. I don't want to say it's
Does it though?
impossible to trade, but I think that's a scary spot. That's all I'm getting at. There's got to be a lot of thought and pre-planning to pull the trigger there. But listen,
Yeah,
for the
it's got to
exercise,
be a
it's great.
quarterback that you like. It's got to
Right.
be a quarterback that you like, right? You can't just go in
I
there and say,
actually like
I'm
him.
just drafting a quarterback because I want to pick one in the first round.
Right.
But I don't think that pick eliminates you from doing it in 2027. If you come out and whoever wins the quarterback, like if you make that move, right, at Simpson versus Willis for that 2026 quarterback competition, and you come out and you only win 2 games in 2026 because both quarterbacks were awful, I don't think it necessarily prevents you from taking that swing again. Maybe it prevents you from being in the arena of trading up to chase a quarterback, but I don't know that if you end the season with an awful record, that it prevents you from doing it again. Again, because that is the second first round pick, right? If the Dolphins weren't picking until 30 and you drafted a quarterback at 30, then I think that might take it out of the question. But with that being the second pick in the first round, I think you afford yourself a little more flexibility.
I do agree with that. But yeah, you listen. If you want to swim in that pool, I'll throw you a floaty, buddy. But I'm out.
It wouldn't be my first choice. It wouldn't be my first choice, but I could see the appeal. We got Dundee hopping in, Max Iannaccio at 30. Look, I'm a big fan of Iannaccio. I would not be surprised to see somebody taking a swing at him in the first round for where the Dolphins are right now and the immediate help they need on the offensive line. I'm not sure that I want to be in that pool to where I need to feel pressured to start him immediately, right? I think that Iannaccio is going to be a very good player as he continues to mature, but I think there is still a gap between where he is and solid NFL starter. I would prefer to see him go to a team that has that bandwidth to allow him to develop as a backup until he's really ready to step into that starting lineup. And then Dundee also chiming in on that Tyler Simpson move. You got to have a strong belief in Tyler Simpson to make that pick. And I agree completely. And, kind of going back to what Indeed said with the parameters, realizing how thin it can be to draft those guys. That would not be my first choice in that situation. right? But we're trying to not draft the same guys over and over again. And that's kind of where I was going with that Ty Simpson move. So as we get into pick 43, have a offensive lineman in Fano, have a wide or a quarterback, geez, in Ty Simpson. And now, you know, look at why can't I draft Blake Miller? Why can't I draft
Yeah.
Anthony Hill? Why can't I draft Malachi Lawrence? Right now, this is where we start to, kind of really get down the list. And I like that. I like Caleb Tiernan here, right? I have a round 2 grade on Caleb Tiernan. I like him a lot, so I'm going to keep that one in mind. I haven't looked at a lot of wide receivers, right? So there may be some holes that I'm leaving open there. I do like Cassius Howell a lot, and considering they went offense with the first 2 picks, that might be a position that I entertain. I don't necessarily like
The arm
what he
length is
brings
really hurting
to
him. Look, I
the
can't
room.
believe he's that far down. I'm sorry, brother.
You're good. It's just like I feel like it's kind of redundant, right? I would prefer to see an edge that's
Definitely.
coming in that can, do more of that traditional 4-3, heavy-handed, hand in the turf type deal. I don't think that's Cassius Howell, but I do like him a lot as a individual player.
Right.
I'm going to go one more page here, and then I'm going to make a decision. And I'm going to go back. So I am going to go with Caleb Tiernan. I do have a round 2 grade on Caleb Tiernan. And my thoughts here, right, are that because of the arm length, I'm not sold on Fano as my number 11 pick being a tackle. I think that Tiernan is a player that could come in and could compete from day one with Charlie Heck as that primary swing tackle, right? And if we decide in 2027 that Fano is a guard specific player, then Tiernan is a player that I think could develop into your right tackle of the future. So that's the direction I'm going to go there. So that's 3 offensive picks in a row, which brings us to number pick 75. Drafted Keontae Scott earlier. Definitely like that value. Bud Clark, I have a 2 to 3 in terms of picks. Brian Parker, again, another player that I really like. Keelan Rutledge, already talked about him in the sense that I like him. Jacoby Lane, of course, still on the board. You got Oscar Delp. This would be a position that I would be intrigued by Oscar Delp at. Malachi Fields, another big wide receiver. And Austin Barber. I like the value here for Austin Barber as well, but we already went guard and tackle. So I think I'm going to circle back here. And I don't have an official ranking for Deny Dennis Sutton yet, but I do feel that this is a player that's more of a 3 down player at defensive end. That I think that when we talk about the Chop Robinsons and the Josh Uches, I think that Deny Dennis Sutton is the type of player that would complement them well and be able to do some of the things that Robinson, Uche do not do so well. So I'm going to go again, right? It gets tough as we get into here. Dennis Sutton as my pick. And then we are getting to
I
87.
like it.
Very much the same type of draft board. And as we look here, right, a lot of the same names. Going to have a hard time passing over Bud Clark once again. So I have Downs, Thieneman, McNeil, Warren, and then Clark is my 4th safety on the board. And I like a lot of what Clark does. So I would have, at this point, I would have a hard time passing him up. You did draft him in the same pick in your first draft. So that kind of breaks my heart in the sense that I feel like I would be breaking the rules to go there again.
I won't look.
What's that?
Said I won't look.
Takario Davis. I don't know that I have him quite that high. Man, now we are getting
Yeah, it's getting tight.
it is, right? So Will Lee, where do I have him? I have Will Lee. So I like Will Lee in the third, so I'm going to keep him kind of as a consideration. I have Will Lee just ahead of Dalen Everett. So I'll keep those two in mind. Malachi Fields. You know, I'm going to go Bryce Lance here just to give us a different name and to give
I
us
thought
a
about that as
wide
well.
receiver that has some size. So I'm going to go Bryce Lance here
Burner.
at number 87. And then we get Zachariah Branch, Jude Bowery going off the board. You got Dundee Dolphin chiming in there. Big fan of Denied Dennis Sutton. And that kind of brings us back to basically the same board again. So it doesn't make things any easier at all for me. And so with this pick, I think, and I'm going to scroll through a couple more names here. And I did go with Endries before, if I remember correctly. Yep, I went to Endries at number 90 before. So I think with this pick, where I would like to go is Romello Height. He's not a ideal edge rusher, but when we're talking about getting down in the end of round 3, it's a dude that I feel like can just apply pressure, right? It's not something we're going to look at as an every down player, but if we can get to those second and third and long players, I think that Romello Height is a player that can be impactful in a limited role and probably still contribute on your special teams as well.
See a little bit of a
And
backup
then
plan for Chop, do you think?
I, well, so if we I think it depends on how they decide to structure the defense, right? Are they looking at Chop and Uche being the two edges, and that's what it is, right? If it is, then I think that he could kind of spell both of them. But if they look at Chop and Uche kind of playing the same position and then having Deny Dennis Sutton in this iteration as the other edge, right? Then um you know, then height is probably too redundant, right? So I think in this scenario, it would be more of, picturing edge kind of in waves, right? I think that would be the approach that I would look at with that.
Yeah, Height's a guy that I don't know much about, so even from measurements, nothing's kind of ringing a bell. So that's why I was curious, kind of how you saw him fit.
Yep. And then as we get into number 94, so this is where being the fourth draft, getting late in the third round really kind of uh limits the options here. So we did draft Ty Simpson, so I can't even throw a quarterback in here, right? I would like to throw Cole Payton in there, but you're not gonna go Cole Payton after going Ty Simpson in the first round. So I'm gonna, you know,
Kyle Lewis, I think that's not a bad spot for him.
and I'm thinking about that, right?
Do you
When
have a safety?
Isaiah World is a player that I like, right? I like his upside, but we're talking about we already got Fano, we already got Tiernan. I could see a world where you do go Isaiah World. Um, where do I have Lewis on my board?
I mean, a linebacker or safety is kind of the first question. Like I said, I'm still playing around with what I even think like he is. I've seen people call him a safety. I've seen people say, no, this is a linebacker. It's interesting.
So as we flip over to linebacker there, A player that I am higher on than consensus is going to be Torian York, right? And this is, I mean, this draft as a whole kind of feels like we're just going upside on a lot of this, right? We're projecting Fano maybe being a tackle. We're projecting Bryce Lance making the jump from North Dakota State. We're projecting Romello Height to be able to overcome some of the measurable issues. Same deal with Torian York, but I love Torian York's tape. So that's what I'm going to go with at the end of round 3 there. Definitely not my favorite draft, but I think there is a lot of upside in this draft.
Very interesting. And yeah, man, that gets tough when you start really eliminating guys and, you get through 2 or 3 draft. It is slim pickings out there.
All right, now we are going to go fairly quick because we're moving on to hour and 20 minutes of this, right? And we get let's see, comments quickly. Dundee, Bryce Lance, mad potential so long as he doesn't sneak up the rankings.
Burner.
Kyle Lewis, hybrid safety box linebacker. Yeah, and that's kind of a positionless player, in my opinion. I like him. I don't know where he fits. Love Kyle Lewis, a good DC pounds the table for a piece like him.
I think so
And
too.
then maybe wouldn't take him ahead of 111, though, maybe 94. So,
Somebody's going to fall in love with him, I think, and get him a little earlier.
yeah, I could certainly see that. And now, as we move on to the third iteration of the fifth iteration of this 3-round draft. So we are going to stick to the same concepts that we've had, right? We can't draft the same players that we've drafted already. And we've already done a lot to help Malik Willis through these first 4 drafts. But the idea of this 5th draft is, there's been a lot of talk of, we sign Malik Willis to this contract, but then we go trade away Jalen Waddle. How can you really evaluate Malik Willis given the skill players that you have left for him to work with? So the 5th and last iteration of the draft tonight is going to be, how can we most help Malik Willis without drafting the same players that we have drafted already? And Dundee Dolphin, I'm sorry, that's Greg Kreishaben, Aqua and Coral Report. Definitely recommend checking out his site as well. Halfley Legs Versatility. And that's definitely something that we've talked about throughout this show in terms of, how some of these different players fit. So,
I think the other thing, real quick, too, is just if we had a little more time, it'd be nice. But I would say, what do you think one thing that you would pound the table for as far as how do we help him best? Is it O-line? Is it weaponry? You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of people will sit there and tell you that, if we can get a receiver, maybe that tight end is, a young quarterback's, best friend, right? Who's the safety security blanket. So if we were doing this for real, we would have to find a common ground as far as our beliefs and our core values is what do we believe is the best way to help a quarterback, right?
yeah, I agree with that completely. So as we get into this Malik Willis draft, top 10, Mendoza, Reese, Maui Noah, Bain, Styles, Freeling, Lemon, Tyson, Downs, Bailey. And I think we kind of got a gift here,
Keldrick
right?
Falk. Yeah, that's nice. We could really use that right now. We're gonna take that and run.
Yeah, I like it, and it's
I
kind of
like
going
Tate,
through
man.
it. I love Tate. Tate is the number 1 receiver on my board. As we were kind of going through those first 4, my thought was, right, do we justify taking Kenyon Sadiq at
I
11
thought
as
that as
being that
well.
player that could help him? But, like I said, I think that we were given a gift here. I don't think that we should overthink this. Carnell Tate at number 11. If the idea is to help Malik Willis, Carnell Tate would be a great replacement for Jalen Waddle in this offense. Do you agree, Anthony?
I do fully. Yeah, I like Tate a lot. I definitely can see the argument that that Tyson would be number one, but when you factor in the injuries and the risk, that's where Tate moves up ahead of Tyson. Tyson is just so explosive. But I just think, with Tate, he's cleaner, and then getting, the Brian Hartline coaching and treatment over there, man, they are just churning them out left and right. Very safe, very happy with that pick.
All right. Do you have thoughts on here on number 30? So I kind of filtered out. Well, I'll throw running back in there too, but wide receiver, tight end, running back, tackle, and interior offensive line.
Yeah, we
Um,
got a one, right? So I think we could even be a little patient in finding, because that's a lot of targets, right? That would be, you would assume, like, hey, let's force feed that so that way you guys are really a thing, right? Like, we almost want to, I mean, go heavy towards Tate when it comes to target share, because
yep.
again, you get a number one guy, we need you on the same page as a quarterback. So everything else is kind of secondary around him. So if you're leaning O line, I'm with you. I agree to start looking in, that way first.
Yeah. And so my thoughts here on offensive line. I already said that Iowan is my top guard, Rutledge, Pregnon kind of the next tier, and then Chase Basantis kind of starts the next tier of that for me. But a player that we have on here um, is going to be Brian Parker Jr. for me. So he's a guy that has played tackle for Duke. He projects as a center in the NFL, but I think this is the type of guy that comes in and we've talked, at least in my review video, I talked about Jamari Sawyer and playing as a left tackle, right guard, right tackle, and being able to find out where he fits on the Dolphins offensive line. I think that Brian Parker is maybe not as good as Graham Barton, but he's from the same cloth, right? College tackle that projects to center in the NFL. I think that this is the type of player that you could bring in. And as you fill out that offensive line, you just say that, hey, Brian Parker is a good player and he can play wherever you need him to be on the offensive line. So as we get into late round one, I think that Parker brings a lot of versatility there. Parker would be my pick. Do you have a case for Dunker, Basantis, anybody else that you'd like to put out there?
No, not enough, not strong enough in any direction that would steer you away from Brian Parker. I also, just because you're the O line guy as well, I definitely lean on you in that area. But yeah, Dunker's interesting, man. I think he was a hotter name at the beginning of this whole process, and then it kind of cooled off once we saw some tape of and slow movement, and people started to kind of question some things. And then Basantis, I reached out to you a couple weeks ago and said, "What do you think?"
Yep,
So I'm with you. I know Parker's been a guy that you've been high on since the beginning of this. So I like the fact that you're standing your ground there.
absolutely. So we're at pick number 43. We got Dundee hopping in here. How to help Willis. One, build the line. Two, shore up the run game. Three, wide receivers who are good in scramble drills. And Dundee seems to be pretty adamant that Lemon is number one.
Not for
Uh,
me.
I was listening to 3 yards per carry, you guys, earlier, and I get the argument. I just can't get there for Lemon. Um, Dundee also says plus most of the mid round wide receivers are big guys, which I like that. And then let's see, keeping going through the comments, got Christian Leap chiming in there, and then Dundee Dolphin. Lemon is football mad, prototype character, 3-year captain, led multiple significant national receiving stars. Would we take him at 11? That's a different matter, but him over Tate, whom I also like. And I think that I could, like I said, I could see the arguments there. It's Tate for me, but I get the
Yep.
argument for Lemon being there as well. So
Dundee, before
Anthony,
we end this, I'll chime in on Lemon a little bit when we get a chance.
all right. You want to do that now or you want to wait?
That's up to you. That's up to you. I know
Let's hear
we're. I
it
mean, we're
now,
at an
right?
hour and a half. Okay.
Conversation's hot. Let's get it out of the way.
So Lemon, again, absolute dog, good football player, totally get it. But I think unless you are going to build an offense that's going to run through a slot type of receiver, it's not, that's where he belongs best. I looked at, the last couple of years and whatnot. There are not a lot of guys that finish top 25 in receiving yards and production that are under 6 foot. He came in at about 5'11. Besides Amon Ra and Zay Flowers and Jalen Waddle, the other one I think was Christian McCaffrey out of like the top 30 guys. So again, it's a big receiver kind of league for one. Then there's the other stuff that, again, and this is hearsay based on Todd McShay and his podcast, but he had a conversation with some NFL execs, and and this was relevant because of Lemon's combine interviews, right? That were a little bit odd, we'll say, and he had said like, so what's going on with the receivers? How do you kind of rank them and whatnot? And then the GM and the NFL exec, whoever personnel was that he spoke with, had said, yeah, Tate, smart dude, this and that. And then he brought up Tyson, kind of said the same thing. And then he kind of like awkwardly like stopped and didn't say anything about Lemon. And he was like, are you going to bring up the other guy that's always in the conversation? And he's like kind of, it's kind of funny at that point or whatnot. But then he's like, yeah, there's just, we're not concerned about it or anything, but he's different. Like there's something there. There's a little bit of like there's a little bit of bullshit attached to him, sort of deal. So for me, I where we are as the Dolphins, personally, like I said, I think we're looking for guys with the complete opposite sort of mentality and character around him. Not saying he's bad character, but I don't want any question marks in that area. I want Captain America. That's what I want right now, at least. Not saying that trumps all, that trumps talent or anything like that, but I think, for me, when you combined all of those ingredients, that's where I lean. And again, some of the stuff that he did in college, I'm not saying it won't happen in the pros, but I just think, for a guy that there was a lot of 50-50 balls it seemed like he came down with, and I'm just not sure that you're going to win those at 5'11", when, you step up in competition. I think if you think he's Amon-Ra St. Brown 2.0, hats off to you. Go for it. And if you're going to build your offense through that guy, great. That's where you'll see him at his best. But if you're going to give me the option of Lemon at 11 or even 15, like I'm perfectly fine going like Antonio Williams or somebody else, in the second round and call it, and preferring that value, or even Omar Cooper Jr. at 30 over, who I also think is a dog and a similar player, and he's a little bit bigger too. I would prefer that more so than I would Lemon.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the parts that we don't necessarily get the access to. We've all seen the combine interview, and that was kind of weird, right? Like there was something off there. Teams are going to be able to find out what the deal was there. Did he receive some misguided recommendations on how we should handle that, right? Dundee hopping in here. I hear you. He's an unusual character, but Lemon fits the offense we've been running, which 23 are running in 2026. And I, but I also agree with Anthony in the sense that, especially when we're talking about somebody at number 11, I don't want those kind of questions, right? And Dundee saying not a 3-year captain for nothing, and that's what I heard on the 3 yards
I
per
get it.
carry
I get it.
podcast feed. Like I totally get that. I think that's something the team will have access to that we don't. Like we are forming our opinions just based on what we have seen. And then one of the great parts here too, Dundee saying wouldn't hate Tate, right? And this is one of the fun parts. Like this is why these conversations are fun. It's not fun if everybody has the same exact opinion. The fact that we can be, respectable to each other with these opinions and understand each other's point of view, right? Love having these conversations,
It's the
right?
best time
And
of the
then
year,
we
man.
get
Yep.
Anthony Manzano hopping in there. I'm not drafting a DB in the first round because we can get it in the third round because Sullivan has said multiple times he wants big, physical, and fast. The guy, uh, the guy product in the first one don't fit. Not sure what that means, right? But I do think that I could see the case for not drafting a defensive back in the first round, especially with John Eric Sullivan talking about wanting to build from the inside out. So I completely get that side of it as well. And then Dundee just pointing out, right, that Mekhi Lemon is one of our 30 interviews. And he says, I think there's a chance they absolutely love him. And
I
for
do too.
me, that is just an opportunity to kind of vet what they saw or what they heard at the combine, right? I think that there is certainly gamesmanship that goes on with those 30 visits, right? Trying to maybe inflate the stock of some players. Um, I don't know what to think of Mekhi Lemon, right? Like there is what we've seen and there's what we've heard, and those seem to be two very different things on the players. The stuff that we've heard have come from very credible sources that I feel know what they're talking about, but it doesn't necessarily match up with what we've seen. So for me, I'm glad they're bringing him in on a 30 visit. I want them to do their due diligence. And by the end of it, right, hopefully they do know what they're getting, right? Because if he is on the field in Amon-Ra St. Brown and you don't have to worry about, and I don't think you're gonna have any off-field issues with Mekhi Lemon. Like we're getting way too
Correct.
far into a discussion about a wide receiver, right? But I don't
Yeah.
expect any off-field issues with Mekhi Lemon. It's more so like how does he really fit into an NFL locker room based on what I have seen? But again, what I have seen does not match up with what I have heard. So as we
Very well
continue
put.
moving on here, number 43. So we did in this how do we help Malik Willis draft? We did draft him. We did draft Carnell Tate to help him out here. We do have some good options at wide receiver. We did also draft an offensive lineman in Brian Parker. So, Anthony, you know more about the wide receivers right now than I do. Are there any wide receivers that stick out here that you really like? Because as I go to page number 2, there are certainly some tight ends that kind of stick out, and Eli Stowers is probably the one that's sticking out the most. And if we're talking about how do we help Malik Willis, Eli Stowers for me would be a really intriguing option to add into that. I don't want to call him just a tight end, right? A receiving threat room. I think that would be a nice addition for Malik Willis. Are there any tight or any wide receivers that you would put ahead of him?
So I hate the fact that I haven't really watched any of the tight ends. So it's tough for me to have, be a part of that conversation, based on everything that I listen to and just how much I absorb. I have an idea of kind of a little bit of everything and everyone, right? But I still want to see it with my own eyes. But when you go to receiver, I'm a big Elijah Surratt fan, but I think it'd be it'd be an interesting combination with Carnell Tate, where I think maybe you wouldn't have as much explosiveness as you want in the receiver room, where I think both of them are a little bit more possession receiver than they are playmaker. I know what Tate did in college, but I think when you look at the speed, the 40 time, I'm not sure that he's going to be able to get over the top as consistently as he did in college. I'm not saying he won't be able to do it ever, just as consistently. And Surratt is not really a vertical guy. That's a chain mover kind of guy that just knows how to get open and work back shoulder and work and get open, in the short area off his release. So I really like him, but I think if you're trying to match somebody up better with Carnell Tate, Antonio Williams would be a guy. I like him, but at the same time, I know we used him already. Chris Brazel's interesting, but I don't know. There's just something about
And
the
that was the name
Tennessee
that come up.
receivers.
Yep, Cap for Life brought up Brazel as
Mm.
well, asking if he was off the board. He is not off the board. By draft professors, he is ranked as the number 48 BPA on the board of 13. But continue on, Anthony.
No, I'm sorry. I think and I think I know you like Jacoby Lane, but I would say that if I was going to look at that 6'4", 6'5", where you're pushing like big, right? Not 6'2", 6'3", right? If you're going to go big, I would probably go Brazel. He's 6'5", and I think he's kind of the same thing, right? You could go scramble drill with him. I think he's a better route runner than he's given, maybe credit for, or people would assume based on his size. And I also think he can, you can pretty much call him a burner, right? Again, it sounds like I love him, but there is just a little bit of concern I have because I don't know, the Tennessee receiver thing it's a little weird. What they like to do is space them so far out to the sideline that it limits the route tree, and they like to, it's just how they play offense and whatnot. It's why we haven't seen a ton of Tennessee receivers, work in the NFL because they're coming in. It seems like a little behind the eight ball. If you really like Raritan though, like I'm okay with that because I think for me, we can probably wait one more round and then maybe try to find, an explosive guy, a different type so that way there's some variety in the receiver room. But I don't necessarily think it needs to happen right this pick if you have some conviction on the tight end. I
No,
like
I
Hurst as
wouldn't.
well, but kind of similar to Tate in a way too.
I wouldn't say that I have conviction on the tight end. I do like the receiving options that we have in the tight end in Dulcich, in Conyers. Um, and again, I have to do more work on Raritan, but the way that you just described Brazel feels like a lot of similar traits there. So if Brazel is a player that you like at 43, then that's what we're going to go with here to help Malik Willis. And
Yeah,
then we
let's do
got
it. Yep.
Anthony hopping in here, Anthony Manzano, drafts Julian Neal here.
I love it.
Like Julian Neal, but the idea here is to help Malik Willis with this fifth mock draft. Julian Neal doesn't do a whole lot there. Call Jacksonville for Brian Thomas Jr.
I'm in the boat of calling Detroit and for Sam Laporta as they get ready to pay
Yeah, I
Gibbs
would
and
love
Ryan
that.
Branch and Jack Campbell and see if maybe one of those thirds and something is enough to entice. But I love BTJ too. I do. I'm still very
So,
just confused about
do
that
you know where he
situation
got
over there.
traded to? Because Manzano's in here saying that he already got traded.
Uh, I trust me. I got notifications for Adam Schefter. I don't believe that happened.
Okay,
I'm gonna Yeah, I don't. I just don't think it. I don't think it. It did. Maybe some rumors and stuff, but I'm not. I'd be very surprised if that happened and got by me.
gotcha. Dundee hopping in, right? Another thought about wide receiver at 11 is that Sully's dad was a highly rated wide receiver coach. He may well be
Mhm.
looking for value late in the draft. I think that's a valuable opinion as well. I think that that is, um,
I
something that a
just
lot
tweeted
of
about
people.
all this stuff. Yep.
Yep, I think that's something that a lot of people are looking at. Cap for life, hopping in there, Zion Young again. This fifth iteration is players that help Malik Willis, and maybe Zion Young does in terms of getting him the ball back, but not in the vein that we're looking at here.
Love me some
Bryce
Zion
Lane,
Young though, brother.
what's that?
I was just letting that person know the comment. I said, "Love me some Zion Young though, brother."
Oh, absolutely. Zion Young was Anthony's number 30 pick in the first draft. We're trying not to duplicate picks. Manzano hopping in. I like Bryce Lance. He's jumping up draft boards. He might be a second round pick by the draft. Would not surprise me. I did get him in round 3 of my last mock draft. Boston skipping his 40s across the board is a super bad look. Don't disagree there.
Yeah.
Continuing through some of the comments here before we get to our next pick. Let's see. Liked him. I love the conversation that's going on in the chat here. Almost getting tough to keep up with. Uh, Manzano, how about Bryce Lance? He's jumping up draft boards quickly. And again, right, that was my round 3, number
Whoa.
87 pick in the 4th draft that we did. Sam Roush, Dundee's most favored tight end, but not the best help for Willis. And I wouldn't necessarily say that because I do think that improving the run game does help Willis, and Roush, I think, is kind of moving up the opinions in terms of, maybe the number one Y tight end in the draft.
And you'd be
And then,
surprised with some of these Ys that are, blocker types in college that all of a sudden, they get to the NFL and they get a chance to shine and they look a hell of a lot better than you'd think. I mean, we all saw Jackson Hawes last year as a pure
yeah,
blocker. And it
yeah,
felt like, he made as many plays in the pass game as, Kincaid or Knox. It felt, at one point where it was almost kind of consistent. I wouldn't go nuts, if you look at his game log or his stat line, but he did way more than you thought. I thought, the way people talked about him and way people envisioned him, he was going to be Lee Smith. He was never going to leave the line of
right.
scrimmage and never run a route, and that was not the case. So, some of these guys can surprise. They're being
Yeah,
hidden.
agreed. So something I heard again on the 3 yards per carry podcast feed was the idea of trading for Marvin Harrison. Not even
Oh,
sure if he is on the block, but just quickly, Anthony, right? If you had the opportunity
no, thank you.
to trade for Marvin Harrison, would you do it?
No, I'm okay. They're
Okay.
talented, but yeah, I'm good. He's I'm not sure what's going on there. I think there might be might be in his own head a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. And then we got Red Skeleton that you think Stowers is going to be a beast. Again, I need to do more work there. Manzano hopping in there. My favorite tight end in this draft is Tanner Koziel from Houston. That is a new name to me, so that's something I'm going to, try to make a note of to follow up on. And then Red Skeleton with Sadiq. It's almost too good to be true. I do have a first round grade on Sadiq. I could see the appeal in the Dolphins getting him, but I don't really find a scenario where he is the top player for me. So as we keep moving on here, so we are at the top of round 3. We are at pick 75. So far, we have helped Malik Willis with Carnell Tate, Brian Parker, Chris Brazel. And as we look here,
Yeah, I would say if we're going to help him the most now would be with a guy that can maybe uncover and win it. Like Zachariah Branch would be perfect, right? Short area, small, that kind of thing, or tight end. That's just my
I
opinion where we're
look,
at.
I love the Zachariah Branch idea, right? We want to find somebody that can create some separation, win those one-on-one,
Who's the
phone booth
screen guy,
type
right?
route, right? I like that. So let's make it a quick decision here. Got Manzano coming in. Guys, how likely do you think it is that Sullivan doubles down on tight end even after re-signing Greg Dulcich? I wouldn't rule that out, right? But not necessarily in a compete with Greg Dulcich type of role. Greg Dulcich is not a Y tight end, right? And when they let Julian Hill go sign with the Patriots, it left a kind of significant gap for that. The tight end they brought in, I'm drawing a blank on his name, Ben somebody,
Ben
right?
Sims.
I don't, what is it?
Sims.
Ben Sims, right? I don't think that he is a number one Y tight end. So I could see a scenario where they go out and they double dip on a Y tight end type player. I don't see that F move tight end being a position they're going to double down on because they do have Dulcich, they do have Conyers. I think they have some good options there, but the Y tight end role is kind of wide open. Your thoughts
And
on that, Anthony?
just the fact that they did that, when they were in Green Bay, they took Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave in the same draft. So they are not opposed to doing that, and running that exact scenario.
Agreed. Dundee hopping in. Help Willis not have to convert third downs on his feet by drafting Mike Washington or Katron Allen.
I
And
love our running back room.
I like our running back room. I do like both of those running backs, and I do kind of have my eyes on maybe a guy at 94 that I'm going to throw out there, but you know, I don't know that you're going to get anybody that's going to dominate the carries from Achan unless you're getting crazy and going Jeremiah Love. So I think I don't know where that value falls and whether that fits where the draft slots of Mike Washington and Kadron Allen will be. Cap for
Dundee, if you
life.
haven't
CJ.
checked him out, check out Seth McGowan. He's an interesting one too, just based on your comment. I think you might enjoy taking a look at him.
All right. Cap for life, CJ Daniels. Dundee is saying that he doesn't think our running back room has adequate depth. Red
Interesting.
Skeleton. I actually think we take 2 tight ends. Again, I wouldn't disagree with that. And then Manzano, would you guys consider Oscar Delp a Y or F tight end? Is that a player that you have taken a look at yet?
It's not enough for a deep dive and a confident opinion one way or the other. Based on what I hear and read, I do think that he's Y capable, and that's where you should try him at first. And F should be kind of the fallback option if he doesn't do it properly. And I think he'll succeed one way or the other.
So Delp is an interesting prospect for me in the sense that it's been very widely reported that he was playing with I believe, a hairline fracture in his foot.
Yep,
Um,
tough kid.
his receiving numbers, right? They just aren't really there. Like he consistently averaged around 230 catches, 250 yards per game over the past 3 seasons.
I
And
think
the
that's
next
more of a
note that
Georgia thing too.
and the next note that I have on there is I don't see him as an inline tight end on my notes. I think he's got decent hands, but doesn't do much with it after the catch,
Hmm.
right? So that's where, I don't feel like he's really a threat. And maybe that part of that does come down, a broken foot can go a long way towards affecting your ability to move after the catch. So maybe
Yeah,
part of that
absolutely.
has to do with it. But for me, based on what I've seen so far, I don't really see him as a Y type tight end. Dundee, I think we need a workhorse type, in my opinion, Green Bay style.
We have
Don't
one.
necessarily have one.
We have one. I like Ollie Gordon, man. I,
I
I
love.
think I think he's hiding. You know how I feel about him. Like he was somebody that when we got down to the point last year where playoffs were out the window, I understood why HN would play and all that, but I really wanted to see more of Ollie Gordon and just let him go to work and see what it looked like when you gave him 20 carries, 25 carries, and tried to grind out a win on the ground like that. And Jalen Wright played pretty damn well too, man. He ran angry. He finally looked like what we thought he would look like when he took over in the game versus the Jets. I know it's the Jets. I know it's only one game, right? But again, like I know you want more proven things, but I look at that room. I really like that room.
Yeah, and I think there is still potential in that room. I think there's the opportunity to see what they have in that room before investing heavily. I wouldn't be surprised to see another draft pick in that room, but I don't think that you have to reach to find the workhorse in there. Uh Manzano hopping in there on Delp again. I blame the lack of consistent production for Oscar on the coordinator at Georgia under utilizing him and the inconsistency of the
From what
offense.
I've heard, I agree.
And then Dundee, Gordon is unproven, as you concede. We need more competition. And I think both of those are true. Like, I don't
So
think
would
that
a rookie,
Anthony's
right?
right.
Be unproven.
I don't think that you're sitting here, Anthony, and saying just to hand him the job,
Correct.
right? But it doesn't need to be even maybe not even a day two type thing that you have to go out there and find that workhorse. So I'm going to give you number 87 here, right? There's only going to be 2 other players that come off the board, but I have somebody that I really like at number 90 that I'm going to go with. So we have Tate, Parker, Brazel, Branch, you'll get your pick for number 90 as to how you want to help Malik Willis, and then I'll circle back at number 94, assuming that you don't steal my guy.
You know what? Let's go. I'll go Kendrick Law. And I know this is, you know what? I don't know. Because if somebody falls in love with him, they might, he might not go as far down as maybe some of his rankings. He's a guy though that at Kentucky was used in a similar way as like Zachariah Branch, completely different player. Zachariah Branch is like 5'8", and like Deshaun Jackson level explosiveness kind of player. Kendrick Law is a little bit bigger, but I remember when the Packers back in the day took Randall Cobb out of Kentucky, and yes, a little bit shorter than Kendrick Law, who was 6 foot, but he did a lot of the jet sweeps, a lot of the screens, a lot of quick catches to get the ball in his hands and let him go to work. A lot of stuff happened at the line of scrimmage and near it. So he's just another guy, another weapon that I think realistically you could probably line up at running back, slot, receiver, and he's probably between him and Branch, one of them will be your kick return, punt return. So field position will be improved, and you'll be helping out Malik Willis in that aspect as well.
Absolutely love that. And then we get, let's see. So Manzano chimes in. Out of the two Penn State running backs, I prefer Nick Singleton over Katron Allen. And I can certainly see that. Singleton also dealing with a foot injury. I think that he would be getting a little more buzz if he wasn't dealing with that. Red Skeleton had hoped that we'd sign A.J. Dillon.
No. Oh, my goodness. If there is any running back I have conviction on, good or bad, it's that A.J. Dillon is not a good football player. Not for me at all.
And then Manzano,
sorry, brother.
I give a recommendation? The tight end from Houston, he ran really well at the combine, and he's projected around this pick.
Tozeal. Yeah, I'm going to get into tight ends. There's been too many times I've had to say I haven't watched them yet. It's bothering me. I got to start, popping off the top on those guys.
Yeah, so I'm not sure who the tight end.
That was Koziel. I wrote it down.
Okay. He was mentioned earlier. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Eric McAllister, not somebody I have watched. Do you have any?
No, McShay likes him though. He was doing a skit where he was kind of like, "Hey, we're gonna start a sentence and don't be surprised if," and then we're gonna say some bold things. And his guy was, "Hey, don't be surprised if Eric McAllister ends up being a top something receiver or whatnot in this draft." So TCU guy, if I'm not mistaken. I looked at him a little bit. I could see it, but further down my list.
Gotcha. And then Brennan Armstrong, Red Skeleton loves him, says he plays tougher than his size would indicate. So that is going to bring us to
Speedster,
the last pick of this draft. And for me, I do like Singleton. I am going to go with.
Give us the fullback, baby. Find the fullback.
Not in round 3, buddy. Damon Claiborne out of Wake Forest. I think he just ran a really impressive
haven't heard of him.
40-yard dash. And I have a tweet back here from January where he's kind of got a memorable name there, right? He's the type of back that can get into a Shanahan-themed scheme and excel, shows good vision, doesn't create negative plays, good one-cut runner who sees his lane and accelerates through it, doesn't dance much, but can make a defender miss in a phone booth, which he did in the clip that I shared there. Not a power guy, and didn't see much of him catching the ball, but he's a guy that I like. So just in terms of scheme fits, right, and especially without knowing what Achane is going to do, Damon Claiborne is a player that I liked a lot, and apparently I completely lied. Number 90 was not the last pick. We are back on the board at number 94, right, and trying to find a way to help Malik Willis.
Fullback. Well, you know what? Maybe what do we have for tight end right now?
So at tight end, Delp, Endries, Trigg.
We haven't taken one yet either, correct?
We have not taken a tight end, no.
Well, let's go there. Again, right, another position that you haven't necessarily looked at in super depth, correct? Or have you?
No, I haven't, but I'll tell you what.
Okay.
how do you feel about throwing one to the chat here, right? Throw a
Yeah,
vote in the
I
chat.
love it. When you said that, I kind of figured that's where you're going. I'm with you.
Tanner Koziel, Houston, you like it?
I'll leave it up to them. What do you guys think? Agree on one. You guys got, according to our timer, you got 30 seconds. Figure it out right now.
All right, 30 seconds. You got your chance for tight end, right? The ones I'm thinking of right now, Delp, Raritan, Koziel, right? If you really want to go the fullback route, we could go Max Bredesen.
Royer's a
Roush is
name
no
that keeps
longer.
popping up as well. I don't know if you've heard anything about him, but I know there's some people that like him. I don't know much about his game though. I know that
What was that
Jolly's a
name?
little bit Royer from Cincinnati.
Nope, that's not one that I'm familiar with. Dundee wants Sam Roush, who is
I,
not on the board anymore.
yeah, I don't think
I
he's there.
feel like I would like him also, but end of round 3 is probably not going to happen.
I saw somebody put up a list of the best blocking tight ends, and Kaczmarek was the first one on the list. They had Delp actually as number 3, which is why I kind of have that in the back of my head. Now, again, I'm not trying to put too much trust into somebody that I don't even remember who it was, but little things that I kind of, try to keep in mind when, I don't have enough information to use, just things that I see. Again, I really got to get into this tight end class.
All right. So,
Time's
not
up,
completely
boys.
unexpected. The chat cannot agree on anything. We got Dundee with Roush. We got Red Skeleton with Delp. We got Manzano with Tanner. We got Idleman with Jolie. Dundee wants Raritan. And then we get Dundee saying Dundee is the standout of those available in his opinion. So Dundee getting the second vote in there on Delp. We're gonna roll with Delp here for the second for this
I like
last
it.
pick, so we don't drag it on till uh, too long. So this draft to help Malik Willis, Carnell Tate, Brian Parker, Chris Brazel, Zachariah Branch, Kendrick Law, Demond Claiborne, and finishing up with tight end Oscar Delp. Now let's see if I can get these all up on the screen at the same time. I don't know if I'll be able to. I will not be able to. But what I will do is I'm going to share all 5 of these mock drafts on X. Want you guys to check out all 5 of them. Let us know which ones you think were the best drafts overall. Were there certain ones that you felt like we were picking guys way too high, other ones that you felt like guys were falling way too low? Just in general, let us know your thoughts. I know that I had a lot of fun doing this. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
sit
man.
here and go live for 2 hours without having a good time. I think Anthony definitely did as well, and we definitely
Sir.
got a lot of input from the chat. Always appreciate that from you guys.
Yeah, a lot of fun, buddy. A lot of fun. Pretty sure the
All
wife
right,
is
fella.
probably passed out on the couch now and saying, "Where the hell is this guy?" But yeah, it was worth it.
Absolutely. Love it, man. All right. So, like I said, check this out on X. I will post all 5 of these together in a graphic. Let us know what you think. Appreciate you guys watching. And as always, stay focused on fins.
Thanks, guys.